2000 Honda Accord LX. It's an 18-year-old front-wheel drive, 4-cylinder automatic sedan. This is not an outwardly remarkable car. Even among Japanese US domestic market sedans, it's not a cultural phenomenon like the LS400, or a cult classic like the Cressida, or a tuner favorite like the Civic, and let's be honest, this particular specimen is not exactly in showroom condition. With over 250,000 miles on the clock, it's been passed around the operations staff at the local nuclear power plant like, something other than a joint. Those aren't allowed. White, used up, and lying in the street, this poor car is the automotive equivalent of a cigarette butt. I suppose it's a testament to the Accord's reliability that it's gotten this far on the original engine and transmission with no major repairs. So, I go over to Sling Blade's house. I borrow the car. I get in and the radio is tuned to NPR. Of course the radio is tuned to NPR in an Accord. There's a kind protein bar in the center console. Of course there's a societally conscious protein bar in the center console. There are tools and technical manuals and nitrile gloves and lubricants in the trunk. Of course there's all kinds of useful work stuff in the trunk. Hopping into the driver's seat of this car, I'm reminded of a moment from the first day of my sophomore year at engineering school. I sat down in class, and my unbelievably wholesome childhood next-door neighbor walked in and sat down next to me. He sits down, and as he strikes up conversation, he opens up his backpack and produces a TI-83 graphing calculator, a plastic grocery bag full of fresh fruit, and a copy of the Holy Bible on audio cassette. You know what? He might as well have whipped out a set of Honda Accord keys while he was at it. Geez, could you possibly be a more upstanding citizen right now? 2000 Honda Accord LX. Compromise, hard work, providing. These are the trappings of a working man, a regular person if you will. They may not afford him riches, but they surely afford him his dignity. That is the right of a person to be valued and respected for their own sake, and to be treated ethically. He is loath to be cheated. He abhors an insult to his intelligence, because these are assaults on his dignity, and this is the one thing that he is assured in exchange for trying to live a life that is, if nothing else, upright. And it seems that Honda wanted, more than other automakers, not to do wrong by its customer base, to lend them their dignity. With this car, it never seems that Honda thought, you know what, that's good enough for our customers. You know what, who's really gonna notice how cheap this button feels? Honda, as if guided by some automotive golden rule, would build you an Accord as if they were building it for their brother. This car echoes those universal self-evident truths of human dignity in a way that most cars don't, in a way that most mass-produced products of large corporations can't. There is, after all, some quality that we are endowed with by our Creator that separates us from apes. We as human beings are naturally inclined to cater to one another's needs, and Honda's organization was better than most at stopping the accountants from interfering with the technical people's desire to build that good car, so they were able to forge that uniquely strong bond with their customer, for Honda so loved the earth. The Accord is, then, your consummate working-class hero for and by working-class heroes. The 6th generation Accord was simple in its taste and purpose. This car ran from 1998 to 2002, a full 5 model years, a long time for Honda, who had standardized the Accord on 4 model year generations. Of course, that's still a far cry from some other automakers who had run the same midsize sedan for 15 model years straight. General Motors. Cutlass Sierra. We've been selling this Cutlass Sierra for a long time. Don't you think we should do something with the body or the chassis? No, dude, just give it a song. It's way cheaper. Cutlass Sierra. In the decades wherein the Japanese were overtaking the Americans as the default automakers of choice for many Americans, Honda was not the only company that would build you a modest, inexpensive car with quality and reliability, but the mainstream Hondas, the Accord and Civic, were above all others the most enjoyable to drive, and it was Honda's willingness to build a cheap car with such driver friendliness that made them so dignified. Can't afford a Cadillac? No problem, you still deserve a car you'll like, said Honda, and this principle resonated with an extremely wide audience. Not only has the Accord been on the 10 best list of Car and Driver and Enthusiast magazine a record 32 times, it's earned a similar record of coveted red circles and recommended ratings from Consumer Reports, of course a consumer magazine. A lesser automaker would have built a cheap family sedan out of trivial, obvious technology, plastered over with contrived showroom clickbait glitter. But not our Honda. This company put the fruits of their best research and development efforts into even this pedestrian car, and as you peel back its modest shell, you find honest-to-goodness high mechanical technology. We didn't deserve this, but we sure did appreciate it. While it may not have looked like a radical departure departure from its predecessor, and it wasn't in terms of spirit. Honda was breaking new ground with the 1998 introduction of this car in subtle ways. It rode on a brand new chassis with 66% more bending rigidity and 25% more torsional rigidity than its predecessor. This was the first generation Accord wherein Honda actually designed separate Accords for its three main markets: Japan, North America, and Europe. So as the dominance of brands like Honda and Toyota in America was cementing, the Accord was finally freed of its international shackles and allowed to bend to the specific desires of the US domestic market. And since we Yanks like our space, the new for 1998 Accord grew in size enough to be reclassified by the EPA as a midsize rather than a compact car based on interior volume for the first time. The Accord's looks are frankly generic, but inoffensive from all angles. It's a wedge-shaped cab-forward car with a very rakish windshield slope. The belt line is fortunately low and relatively flat. Coupled with thin pillars, this yields windows that are big and easy for passengers front and rear to see out of. The front and rear bumpers are in modern fashion, large plastic pieces with few garnishes. The shape of the taillights is one of the car's few distinguishing features. Construction of the body is unambitious in style, but flawless in execution. It's very unornate, with no chrome outside of emblems, and only a few simple creases in the sheet metal. The factory white paint job has turned chalky after 18 years of neglect, and the finish of the plastic hubcaps has fared worse than most all the car's other trimmings after more than 250,000 miles. Given the circumstances, I'm certainly not complaining. By the way, you can identify this as a later 6th generation Accord because the side mirrors fold in. Per Honda tradition, this Accord came in 3 trim levels: the DX, LX, and EX. A DX with no options was pretty bare, lacking even air conditioning and a basic radio. As a result, absolute base model DXs are rare. Many of them at least came with the DX value package, which afforded you AC, AM, FM cassette, and cruise control. So how do you identify this car as an LX and not a DX value package? Well, it's got 15-inch steel wheels rather than 14 inchers, and it's got VTEC stamped on the valve cover. Yes, while the DX and LX both came with a 2.3-liter single overhead cam 4, the LX's 4-cylinder came with VTEC. This is the increased fuel economy type VTEC, not the increased performance type like you'd find in an S2000. Its trick is that it only actuates one of the 2 intake valves per cylinder at lower RPMs to conserve gas. As a result, not only did the LX have an extra 15 horsepower over the DX, but the LX got slightly higher fuel economy numbers too. A lazier manufacturer might have simply added some displacement to give the higher trim some extra horses at the expense of gas mileage, but not this company. Honda increased the quality, not the quantity, to give you not a bigger but a truly better engine. And now we have to talk about a dark subject. This car's got a black eye. As a matter of fact, this car shoulders a major part of Honda's biggest black eye. It's the automatic transmission that these cars were fitted with. For a company whose name is generally synonymous with reliability and durability, these transmissions were a big disappointment. These transmissions were arguably the single biggest scourge, the single most serious black mark on Honda's entire reliability record. And that's not even to say that they were really catastrophically unreliable, but for a company like Honda, yeah, they were a pretty big miss. Now, Honda is a fiercely independent automaker, and they're always looking to build a better mousetrap. These transmissions, the 6th generation Accord automatics, were mechanically interesting. They had no planetaries, and the clutches acted like synchros. They did have a torque converter, but in some ways they were almost like an early automated manual. Yes, Honda made a mistake here, but it wasn't for lack of trying. Honda wasn't trying to be lazy or cheap. They just honestly thought that they could do it better this way, and this demonstrates Honda's identity as a maverick, daring to be different when they thought it was the right thing to do, but never being conspicuously so, never being a rebel without a cause. And if it makes you feel any better, the manual transmission that came with these cars was fine. Hell, it was more than fine. It was a Honda manual. It was great, but yeah, this car is not a manual, and it's got 260,000 miles on the original automatic transmission. This one made it further than many of them did. And while it doesn't shift well at this point, and hasn't for a long time, it's still perfectly drivable. But all this goes to show you, even a legendary car maker like Honda is fallible. The United States of America had slavery, and Honda had these transmissions. Moving to the inside, you could start to feel the Accord with this generation becoming more Americanized than its predecessors. The seats are wide, and the stitching pattern on the fabric is reminiscent to me of a contemporary Buick Century. Build quality of the cabin is classic Honda, with simple intuitive controls and instruments. Basic components like buttons, knobs, and handles wouldn't feel out of place in the luxury car. Upholstery and materials are pleasant to the touch. The driver's seat is supportive, but better armrests and cup holders would be welcome. The rear seat is remarkably large and comfortable for a car of this size. The seating position is upright with a high, long lower seat